Hi, and welcome back to A Shot in the Story. I'm Robert E. Wilhelm. We're back here at American Legion Post number 7 in Annapolis, Maryland. We are proud to welcome our very first lady veteran in the form of Miss Susan Flanagan, former First Class Yeoman, E6?
Yes, sir.
United States Coast Guard. Now, we were talking in the bar earlier, and you mentioned something that always, everybody in the Coast Guard always kind of feels like they're always like left behind. Like they're always last,
Yes,
Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard.
Always last thought of.
But in this case, in this show, it's been Army, Coast Guard.
Thank you so much for doing that. Makes me feel so proud.
Welcome in. Thanks
you
for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
As we get to the nuts and bolts, what are we drinking here?
We're drinking a Spaten. It's awesome.
Aus Deutschland.
Yes.
Ein Bier mit einem ausgezeichneten Geschmack.
It is good.
You know what that means? Translated, that's a beer with a wonderful taste. Having been to Oktoberfest twice, I can attest. I've been in the Spaten Beer Zelt, the beer tent. Stuff is off the charts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I'm drinking it.
Well, you admit we were in the bar, we're talking, and you mentioned something that really piqued my interest. You said you were early on one of the first women to join the Coast Guard, but then I heard romance, I heard investigation, and read your rights. Mm-hmm. Did I hear that right?
Yes, sir.
Folks, this is a thread that needs pulling. So without further ado, let's take a trip back in time with former First Class Yeoman Susan Flanagan, E6, United States Coast Guard. Uncensored, unfiltered, and unplugged, and right now.
I got interested in the Coast Guard, first of all, because my brother was in it. And my father had always said that you can do anything your brothers can do. And I took it to heart. I knew my father was correct. So when I was a junior in high school, I applied to the United States Coast Guard Academy for acceptance to be in the next graduating class. I got a nice letter back that said that unfortunately at the time, the United States Coast Guard didn't have the capacity to commission women into the United States Coast Guard. And I had that letter mounted and had it on my wall just to remind me that, my father was right. I can do anything my brothers did. So if I couldn't get into the Coast Guard Academy, as they said, well, I was going to go in another way. So I enlisted February 23rd, 1978 in Manchester, New Hampshire, right before I graduated from college. And then I spent a nice summer vacationing by the beach in Hampton, and then realized that, it was time to do something with my life. So in November, I went down to visit my brother, who was stationed in Portsmouth, Virginia, on active duty as a lieutenant in the United States Coast Guard. And I went down there and did my 2 weeks of active duty and ended up staying for 2 years. My first duty station was a reserve unit in Portsmouth, Virginia. We were required to go out and conduct reserve inspections of various reserve units. This first one I was about to do, and there were 7 members going with us. And my commanding officer at the time had told me that I wasn't going to be allowed to have a room by myself, that I was going to stay with him. And I laughed at him and I said, yeah, no way that's happening, sir, no way. No, really, it's going to. So we got to the reserve unit and we got our rooms assigned. My room was assigned right across the hall from his. So I was a little fearful and put up the chair against the door because I just didn't know what was going to happen. So we went to the unit, conducted our business, and then they had a barbecue for us, which was normal if you came from headquarters at the time. So they had a barbecue, and my commander had made a comment that to the effect that, well, Suze isn't going to sleep with me tonight, so I have to go to town to find something else. Now, it was new, and that embarrassed me. So I didn't say anything about it. We went back, got back to our unit, we got back on active duty. Oh, well, we were on active duty. But we got back to the unit, and somebody came to me. One of the commanders had come to me and asked me about what had happened because he heard about it. And he asked how did it make me feel? And I said, well, it made me feel like I was a piece of, equipment, like I wasn't a human being. Anyways, so from the Coast Guard Academy, I got orders to be the Military Civil Rights Council facilitator for the first Coast Guard district, which was Boston, Massachusetts. So I had from Caribou, Maine to Narragansett, Rhode Island, to conduct civil rights, human relations training, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But that's what brought me into my career field. And the battles that had to been fought would just change. And that was the hardest thing to deal with at the time. When I was in Boston, I had fulfilled my obligation for active duty. So I decided to get out, and so I became an adjunct faculty member at Northern Essex Community College, but I still stayed in the reserves. And so then in December 1990, we were going to war, and it was Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So I got my orders on December 20th, 1990, to activate for the Desert Shield. Arrived at Coast Guard headquarters for the operation, which was at Governor's Island, New York City. I arrived there. There were 7 other women that were activated with me for the Gulf War, and it was an amazing experience. When we first got there, the first quarters we were in were reserved barracks rooms for men, because there weren't women, really. They didn't have barracks rooms for women anyways. So, but we had there, so there were 7 of us, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 10 racks in the room. It was just one room and cots and stuff. And then we had a nice urinal that we put a Boston fern in just to make it, a little bit more cheery. But so then when we realized the war was continuing on, so they authorized us to bunk up with other women in the barracks, women that were already on active duty. So that was perfect. So in order to establish camaraderie with the girls that I got activated with for the Gulf War, it was kind of crazy. So we had port and starboard watches, of course, because Iraq's time was totally different than ours. And so I had the morning watch, yay, and my girlfriends had the night watch. But anyways, going on active duty for war is like nothing you've ever experienced before. And I'm sure you can get that from my compadres that have spoken before me. But for women, it was, so we came together, and so we decided that we had to go out one night a week just to get off the island and we're still, be normal. So we'd go into New York City. We'd take the ferry over from Governor's Island, going into New York City, and go through Chinatown or go to Little Italy, and it was wonderful. So during that time, we were always joking around, so we had to come up with a song. So we came up with this song, and I hope I don't need to apologize for it, but it was a cool one. So the song went, sit on my face and tell me that you love me. Sit on my face and tell me that you care. I can't believe my eyes when you're between my thighs. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. oh, sit in my face and tell me that you love me. Da, 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 da. And by that time, we were just laughing so hard, we never finished it. And then when we were on the ferry, if people were sitting there listening to us, that was about the time that they were like, oh my God, what are they saying? So it was good to stop it then. But we had such a great time doing that. We have great photos of us taken from going to the ferry to New York City and the World Trade Center behind us. So after the war was over, I stayed on active duty because you could go back to a full-time job, but I was just adjunct faculty, so I didn't have a full-time job to go back to, so I stayed on active duty. And in the meantime, while I was there, there was a golf course on Governor's Island. And so I started to work there on weekends just to have something else to do. And so this guy came in, he was all wrinkled and stuff. He'd come in, like, be one of the first ones there in the morning. And, you know, he came from officers' quarters, so I thought he was married. And come to find out he wasn't. He was divorced. And so he needed a brick for me to hit over his head to show him that I was interested in him. So I called him up and asked him out. And so he said, well, yeah, where do you want to go? And I said, well, you want to go for coffee? He said, no, I don't like coffee. He said, you like wine? I said, sure. He said, do you like beef? I'm like, oh, yeah. So he asked me to find our first restaurant for a date. So we went to Aaron Burr's Carriage House in Greenwich Village. He still has the bill for that first date, and I think it was like 200 and something. But the thing that got me the most was, you know, ladies, how it is when you go out on a first date with a guy and, you know, you just know something's going to go wrong. I get a menu that has no prices on it. He gets a menu, obviously, with the prices on it. So I'm looking, and I know that, oh my gosh, I have to be very careful and just get something that, you know, is less than what he ordered. So I told the waiter, I just want a good steak. I've been living in the barracks. I want a really good steak because you can't cook anything in the barracks. And so Patrick says, so the waiter says, yeah. He says, well, why don't you do the beef Wellington? That's our signature dish. And Patrick says to me, oh, yeah, well, that's what I'm getting. And Patrick had said, oh, wow, before that. And I thought he meant, oh, wow, the prices are so high. Because I didn't have any prices on my, so I'm like, oh. And so when he said, oh, I was like, oh, damn, another cheap guy. It's not, you know, it's not going to be, we're going to go. And